Hello, Alyssa Farah Griffin. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, Brian.
I'm still not reeling from the fact that there was a fake Alyssa Farah Griffin on my train yesterday.
Yeah.
Which was crazy. I was standing on the train. I looked over and I almost went over to talk to fake Alyssa Farah Griffin.
But for the people listening, you told me there was, and then there was a bit of a delay in sending the photo, and I feel like everyone gets nervous when somebody says someone looks like
course,
them.
yeah.
But she was pretty, and I totally saw the resemblance.
There you go. No. It was very, I sent it around the whole office. I'm probably going to get in trouble for taking random photos of somebody on the train.
Well, there was actually, we did it on the show. I think there was a New York Mag or Cut piece a couple years ago that said you shouldn't tell people their celebrity doppelganger.
Right.
And I always do that. But I have found that people, just because I think it's a compliment, people don't always. Actually, I'll tell this. I told a girl she looked like Kristen Bell. Like the most
That's
gorgeous,
amazing.
a great actress. Like who doesn't want to look like her? And she was like, it depends what era. And I'm like, she's never had a bad era.
No, she's never had a bad era.
I was like, take the compliment.
I finally watched Nobody Wants This, and I love it.
It's so good.
She's never been in a bad show.
She really hasn't.
Veronica
She doesn't
Mars
miss.
is my all-time.
Yeah.
So, love Kristen Bell. No, I think you're right. So years ago, I worked on a different kind of daytime talk show when I was first starting out, and it was kind of like, old school daytime talk shows with lie detectors and paternity tests and things like that. It was a whole different world.
We should do a lie detector.
Oh my God, we've done them. But so the thing is, back then, this is before we had like video. We didn't have video phones or camera phones. This is how old I am. Mm-hmm. So to try to figure out what people looked like when I was talking to them on the phone, I would ask that question: what celebrity do you most resemble? And I'm not going to say the names, but there were definitely names that were huge red flags. Huge red flags because,
You told me this once, and I could not believe you're not that much older than me, but that's how you were doing your job. You had to kind of guess on what people looked like.
There were no YouTube. There was limited internet. This is how old I am.
Yeah, and if you're not a public figure, you're not. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Let's get started with politics. So the Senate is holding confirmation hearings for the Trump defense secretary pick, Pete Hegseth. You've been critical of him as a selection. How do you think this is going to turn out? I'm sure we'll be talking about it this week.
So what was interesting, I watched Chairman Reid, or I guess Ranking Member Reid, the Democrat on the committee, who reminded in his opening remarks that he actually voted for all of Trump's previous Secretary of Defense picks. Mm-hmm. Jim Mattis, Mark Esper, who I worked for, who was actually confirmed as Army Secretary. But it's a reminder that actually people are willing to be bipartisan in the Senate and a lot of these appointments if the credentials speak for themselves. A lot of secretaries of defense, a lot of secretaries of state in the past have gotten bipartisan support. Republicans voted for some of Obama's, for example, and Biden's. So that was just an interesting kind of historic footnote to start the hearings with. My criticism of Pete Hegseth has remained the same. He's a veteran. He served our country, and I'm grateful for him doing that. But his character flaws aside, that have been investigated, I don't know how thoroughly, I don't believe he has the qualifications to run the Department of Defense. And as you know, I was the spokeswoman for the United States Department of Defense. Yeah. That is somebody who went in as a civilian. It is the most overwhelming workforce that you could step into, the level of things that are housed there, the decisions, the number of people, the budgets that are overseen. I would argue it's the second hardest job in America other than the president of the United States. I don't think that you can go in there with the resume that he has. His private sector experience is basically running a small Veterans Affairs charity that does important work, but it doesn't oversee 3.5 million people all over the world. I think people also forget that the Department of Defense also oversees the Defense Intelligence Department agency, which is under it. It oversees the military and civilian population. There's contractors there. There's, even within the Pentagon alone, there's dozens and dozens of businesses. There's parts of it that are almost like a mall. You have to have a certain level of managerial experience. And then add to that his comments about women in combat, I strongly disagree with. Women have been some of our best fighter pilots. They've held very senior ranks. We have generals who are women. There are distinctions of certain roles that women can't do. There are women who've graduated as Rangers, and but there are certain things they can't necessarily do as well, and there are other things they do better than men. He has kind of revised those, but my long and short is I don't know. There aren't answers he could give that are going to make up for the resume deficit, in my opinion, and it's too important of a job. And finally, the Secretary of Defense is the only person other than the President of the United States who can deploy troops. And that is a grave and serious power that is given to that person. You need somebody who has the highest character, the best judgment, and the best experience to do that. And he just, if you look at his predecessors, he's not even in the same league. If he wants to come back in 25 years when he's run a major organization, fine, I guess.
So a lot of the criticism about the criticism has been focused on, because we've said it on this show about a lack of qualifications. And what I always see in comments and things are he's a distinguished serviceman. Yeah. And that's not something we're taking away, I think, but there is a difference between running a massive organization.
It's a really important distinction. Now, again, I would never take away somebody's service to our country.
I salute anyone who serves our country in that way.
But it's worth remembering that tens of millions of people have, and that doesn't necessarily make them qualified to have the very top post, overseeing 4-star generals, overseeing, combatant commands all over the world. That takes a real skill that people spend decades building up a resume to be able to be there.
Right. All right. Let's change gears a little bit here and talk about Ivanka Trump. Now, she did a recent interview where she said her decision to not work in her dad's administration had to do with being with her children and wanting to stay out of politics, which is reasonable, I think. She said she wants to be able to do this to just support her dad as a daughter. What did you think of this? I mean, did you have much contact with Ivanka when you were in the White House?
I did. I actually knew her well, and I honestly really liked her. I had wanted to do this topic on the show, but there were so many good topics. I've always struggled with when she was a White House advisor, she had an office in the West Wing. I think that it was right and serious and credible for people to say, Ivanka, you need to weigh into your father on this. You need to advise him on this, and to expect certain things, because as a White House staffer, she actually didn't take salary, but as an employee of the people, the American people have a right to make suggestions to you, to call on you to do things. I think with this decision to be a private citizen, I hope that there's a lot less of the, Ivanka, will you tell your dad to do this? And I say that because I've been open about my own family. Even take my father out of it, even with my mother, who I'm extremely close with, there is a limit to what a child can say to their parent to change their decision making.
100%.
That's something I think, honestly, as I've gotten older, it's one of the most illuminating things. When it starts to become more of, we're both adults, I have a lot of empathy for the fact that and I know that there were things she pushed back on him in the first administration. She was the person that senators were calling to try to get him to walk back, to say something on January 6th, but even on policy matters. But there's a real limit to it. And with Donald Trump, by the way, staff very often couldn't get him to change his mind.
There's a limit on anyone's ability to do this.
But that was our job. And in the first administration, it was her job as somebody in the White House. Now she's on the outside, and I hope that she's not going to do anything different in terms of if she truly disagrees with something, expressing that to her dad. But I think people need to give her kind of the grace of, she doesn't have some magic wand. This notion that like Ivanka can get him to change decisions that are ingrained in him, it's not true, and it's not unique to Donald Trump. I don't think I could get my parents to change a lot of positions they have.
I have tried and failed many times. Believe me.
This whole election was me talking to relatives and definitely not changing their minds about who to vote for.
I'll say, as I get older, one thing, I used to be very dismissive of people when I would read about them that say they want to spend more time with their family, that are curtailing their own ambitions to do different things. I even like movie stars, like, they're stepping away from movies or leaving a TV show because they want to do, and I would be like, yeah, right. Now I get it. As I get older, your priorities really do change.
I was cynical, and I'd be like, you were pushed out.
Right,
but
exactly.
No, I
you
get
were pushed
it
out.
way more.
Yeah, you can't get those roles anymore or whatever else. No, I think people become comfortable and also want to reprioritize their lives. I
also think it's admirable. The older I get, I think your values, the things you value, kind of reorient themselves. And we don't even have kids yet, but protecting time with my husband and our dogs, and like that peacetime that isn't focused on work, it's not watching the news and death spiraling. It's so important.
Yeah, and also more so.
And we have ambitions and careers and things we want to accomplish. I love this job. I love all the jobs I've had. But I also, a lot of it is like you're working so that you can have the life that you want with your family. So you want to also enjoy that.
That's exactly right. I agree. And everyone's built differently. And there are people that are driven by nothing but ambition. Yeah. But I definitely now have more respect and understand people that make those decisions. Well,
apparently, though, we'll see, because he's very young, Tom Holland came out and said that once he has a family and kids,
saw that.
He's going to retire. And I think Tom Holland's going to be like the next Leonardo DiCaprio.
And now engaged to Zendaya. So
are they engaged?
She was wearing a wedding ring.
Oh, how exciting. I love them both, but I think they're two of like the biggest stars of that generation. I thought that was interesting and admirable if he does it.
Yeah, no, he said if he has children, he's done acting.
Wow.
Fascinating. So hopefully
Okay,
for
Spider-Man.
Yeah, I was going to say for the sake of the Marvel Universe, I hope he
Yes,
waits a little while.
exactly.
But they're young. It's fine. All right. On the same topic, we talked about Carrie Underwood today, and she's planning on performing at President-elect Trump's inauguration. You had an interesting take on this, I thought, saying that this could boost her celeb power with the support of the right. Do you think others will follow suit? Do you think there are a lot of big closet pop stars and
well, I actually think that there are more celebrities writ large who privately support Donald Trump, and it may not be on the issues we think of, but we're maybe more aligned with him on like vaccines or on, masking and a number of different issues like that. It's kind of the RFK Jr. adjacent crowd who, want to make America healthy again. But I could, the way I was thinking of it is there are actually a very limited number of, let's call them musical stars that publicly appear at GOP events. I've been to a lot of Republican conventions. It's pretty much Kid Rock, Linkin Park, but I believe we lost the lead singer of Linkin Park, Lee Greenwood, and like whatever iteration of Journey we're on. Like that's about it. Like there is no more. And maybe, not even that many country artists. We've maybe had one or two, but there is something to Donald Trump won, and he won the popular vote, maybe not by as big of a margin as people originally thought. But you stand to make a lot of people who maybe hadn't checked you out before, or were like, oh yeah, she had that great song back then, who are now going to champion her because they feel like somebody is representing them. So I actually think it's a really smart from a business standpoint.
Well, Carrie Underwood's on the list. I mean, she's a big mainstream younger celebrity. She's
I remember her season of American Idol. Like American it was yesterday.
Yeah, and she's hosting American Idol for ABC coming up, and she's also the voice of Sunday Night Football, which I listen to every week. Waiting all day for Sunday night and all that. So she's a big mainstream person. Yeah,
and I think there's something to.
Who was the biggest star that played at the first inaugural? I don't remember. I know you weren't part of the administration.
I can't remember.
Yeah,
but it's got to be like maybe Lee Greenwood.
Yeah. Yeah, God bless the USA.
Yeah, I thought like she made a point to put out a statement that's about unifying the country. She wasn't necessarily expressing that it's an endorsement, but I think it's a tacit one.
I think so too.
And I think it's interesting. I could see more celebrities coming into the fold. I'd mentioned like Danica Patrick, who you could have guessed. NASCAR always feels a little Trump adjacent, but I think you'll see more of those types of folks because there's also I keep saying this to you privately. 2024 is different than 2016.
I think so.
Trump is mainstream. Trump is as legitimate to a lot of Americans as George Bush, Obama, Biden, in that he won twice and is doing a second term. And I think that it makes people who support him, they feel a little more comfortable with it, where there was a certain like quiet and maybe shame in the first term. And I think you're going to see some of these, celebrity types who.
Well, I remember like they found a MAGA hat in Tom Brady's locker, and that was a big deal.
It was a big deal.
Or just when people would be invited to the White House, some people wouldn't go, or Kim Kardashian meeting with Trump and things like that. So
I have a funny story about that.
Oh, please.
The day that Kim Kardashian came to the White House, I was working for Pence, so my office was in the EOB, which overlooks the White House, just like across a little street. And every girl went to the balconies to watch Kim Kardashian walk in. So she's walking in, she looks super glamorous, but at the same time, Scott Brown, who I want to say was ambassador to New Zealand at that time, former U.S. Senator, walks out and he starts doing these like waves like he's in a beauty pageant. He literally thought all these people came to see the ambassador to New Zealand, Scott Brown. I was like, no, it's Kim Kardashian.
That's amazing.
I also have a picture somewhere of Kid Rock outside the White House with like Mitt Romney. And I was like, what a strange world we live in.
What are they talking about?
What could they possibly be talking about?
That's fascinating.
But that said, the one thing the addendum I would put on that is I think that her statement in saying it's about unifying the country was a smart one, because there are still policies associated with Trump that people find deeply offensive, maybe scary to them. And I think expressing that it's not necessarily everything about him, it's more that you want to unify the country is important.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about the Housewives.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying for you.
Will you do me a favor? When we have some time off, if you will watch one episode of Real Housewives of Salt Lake City, give this show all the Emmys. Like, it is remarkable. These women are so chaotic. Every episode has like, it makes The View and like our little spats look so tame.
And you wonder why I don't want to watch it.
Your blood pressure will go up.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a viewer of it. Two of our producers had been raving and saying I would love it. And so I started with this season after watching what was an iconic season finale last season. I only watched the one episode. It is remarkable. Like, just the level of I like all the wit. Like, you go from episode to episode, you can't decide if someone's a hero or a villain pretty much every single time. In these shows, you would know better than me, but I don't actually think there's a heavy hand in producing at all. I think that, situations are orchestrated that could, but these women, I swear, you could sit them all down for a cup of tea and they would like come up with reasons to be throwing the tea by the end of it. It is iconic. I am obsessed. So...
Speaking of the hand of producers, can we throw some shade on Sarah Haynes? Yeah. I feel bad because she's out today.
I know.
She's okay. Everything's fine. She'll be back tomorrow, but I hope. But so Sarah Haynes started watching this show called Unreal. Do you know this whole thing?
Yeah, she started viewing like a decade after it came out.
A decade after it came out. She watched it for the first time. She's discovered it. It's all she talks about now. And all she talks about is watching. She had no idea that producers were heavy-handed in any way, and now she's very judgmental.
She doesn't trust anyone.
She doesn't trust anyone. She's watching us, and she's like, "Are you trying to manipulate me? Are you trying to do this?"
Funny.
It's like she woke up out of a coma and is talking about The Sopranos being this great new show.
Well, that's my favorite part is the cultural gap of because I did watch it when it first came out in a smart concept. But it's funny, like it is one thing, like I know when you are playing little games with us, like I'm aware and I get why you are. That is kind of your job. You have 5 different personalities, you have different outcomes you want from different people.
Sure.
But the segment producers and the guest producers, they don't do that with us. And Sarah was accusing the segment. I'm like, no, she's producing a guest segment. She's not trying to make you spiral on air. It was so good.
Nor am I, for the record. Spiraling is not good for what I'm trying to accomplish, generally speaking. All right. So the storyline on Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Yes.
It's that Kylie is still texting her friend Dory's husband.
Kyle.
Damn it. Sorry.
Okay, sorry.
Let me do it again. I'm trying.
Really trying.
The storyline on Housewives of Beverly Hills right now is that Kyle is texting her friend Dory's husband.
Dorit.
Kyle
and Dorit.
Okay. Tell me what's happening on Housewives of Beverly Hills.
Okay, that's better. So the main storyline on Real Housewives of Beverly Hills is that Kyle has been texting with Dorit's ex or separated husband. They're separated. They're not divorced yet. And Dorit was not aware of it. And so it's kind of sparked, it's a good topic for the show, this debate over should a friend ever be texting your ex? And the easy answer in dating is absolutely not. When we break up, they're dead to you. You keep your friends, he keeps his. I do think it gets more complicated when you're married, and especially married for a long time. So my best friend Alex, her husband Jay is one of my dearest friends. We're very close. We talk regularly about things that she's not, part of the conversation. She's very close with Justin. She's visiting us this weekend, actually. But I still think if there was a divorce, I would sacrifice the friendship with Jay because that's just your duty. It's harder, and I get that it's grayer in a long-standing marriage and friendship, but I would feel betrayed if you're trying to navigate something super difficult with your partner. You're still going through the separation. You're figuring out how you talk about things, who you share it with, and somebody's talking to that person, especially because Dorit and PK are taking a break from talking to each other right then. So while she's missing him, not having this partner who lived with her, having to deal with this new normal, to know that someone else who's supposedly your friend is talking to him, not in an inappropriate way, I would feel like that's a huge betrayal.
It is hard to cut ties, especially if there's a pre-existing relationship before the coupling.
Yeah.
I guess you just do have to choose sides.
Well, my bone to pick, I set up a couple that got married, but because it was a guy I was dating before Justin, his best friend, I set him up with a girlfriend of mine. And I was the person who got dropped in the breakup.
Oh.
And it to this day, I'm not missing out on the friendships. You showed your colors, but it was a very odd thing to navigate, as they made a very clear break. And granted, the men were closer than the girl and I were, but I do remember being very hurt by it at the time. And every now and then they'll pop up on Instagram. I'm like, well, you don't miss me, I don't miss you.
Exactly. Are you friends on Instagram still?
I still follow all of them. I don't follow the ex, but not out of I think I.
Do you unfriend people generally? I usually just allow it to stay. And
I generally allow it to stay unless there's a significant falling out. And he was pretty brutal. I unfollowed him once we broke up just to have a clean break. Mm-hmm. But if it's cordial, I keep following. So it's also in my interest in their content is honestly the bigger thing.
Sure. Are you friends with a lot of exes on social media?
Only ones who. I should say, actually, only people I casually dated that it ended positively with. But my weird thing is I've never had an amicable breakup. It's always been something went very wrong.
Really?
And that's why we broke up. I've never had the oh, you're just not the right one. It's honestly mostly been cheating or you weren't treating me right.
Oh, wow. And generally, are you the breaker-upper?
I've never been dumped. I've always been the breaker-upper.
All right.
But I had to be honest, I didn't have great judgment in my 20s. So that may be why I didn't have like, oh, there's a lot of love, but you're just not the one.
Sure. All right, interesting. Good stuff. All right. Before we go, Joy's on Finding Your Roots with Henry Louis Gates tonight. So we'll find out if she discovered anything surprising about her family. I think we know because she's been talking about it backstage a lot. I heard you want to be on this show.
I am dying to be on this show. I realize I may not be a big enough celebrity to be on, but please have me on. Yeah. No, I think it's interesting for me. I don't know anything about my dad's side of the family. So on my mom's side, we're basically roughly Eastern European, Polish and Ukrainian, and maybe a couple other things smattered in. On my dad's side, we're Syrian and Lebanese. And in that part of the world, in the Middle East, there's not always a lot of data in like the 23andMe and things where you can pinpoint as much as you can in like Europe and elsewhere in the world. And I did do 23andMe, and it basically just said you're broadly North African / Middle Eastern. They call it MENA. It did tell me the city on the Syrian side, we're from Aleppo. I know that, but I don't have contact with any relatives who are over there. I don't know how many we have left. I know that there's a province that has my family's last name, I believe, in Lebanon. But I'd just be so curious because it's such a mystery. And then even on the Eastern European side, it's always, because it's like the former USSR, like we kind of grew up thinking we were only Polish. My grandma was super Polish. That was our culture.
Yeah.
We're pierogies and Polish. But we found out we're equal parts Ukrainian. And I think I told you this, like we're from Kyiv and Lviv, which we now know from like the war and the regions are like actually mean more now than I ever thought to think about them. And then I also saw that documents of my grandfather said that he was Russian. But again, like with territorial lines changing, you just, a lot of people of a different era were raised to, have a certain cultural identity. And now It's something very different. But long story short, I would love to know more, especially on my dad's side.
Well, Henry Louis Gates is coming on the show soon.
I can make my appeal.
We can make your appeal. I think this is, we'll corner him.
Perfect.
It'll be great. I'll have you back. All right. Well, thank you for joining me today, Alyssa. Tomorrow, Joy is back on the show, and we'll see you then. Thank you, everybody.